It's been 19 years since he's been inducted into the Porsche Racing Circuit Wall of Fame. He's been a legend in his own time. He's also known for a number of achievements, but arguably, I think one of the most memorable achievements is being the team manager for a Porsche Racing team at Le Mans. He's also been the person that dominated the Porsche Club Driver of the Year awards for a number of years, 1985 to 2001. That's 21 years. He's been a developer, innovator. He's been responsible for a number of unique contributions to Porsche Racing in South Africa and abroad. I'm the president of the Porsche Club South Africa, the Central Region, and I'm with Johan Marais, classic manager at Porsche Centre Pretoria, today at the house of Brian and Jeannie White, for the first of a series of video noggins that's going to be produced by the Porsche Club Central and the Porsche Centre Pretoria.
Thank you, Silje. Thank you for the introduction. We sit today with a well-respected Porsche aficionado and connoisseur, Brian White. We know each other for a couple of years, and I am very well aware that we are all aware that you're well respected in the Porsche environment, not only in South Africa but all over the world. Brian, very welcome. I'm going to start at the very beginning, and can you tell us where were you born, schooling, those things?
Let's go back a bit. My father was born in 1895 in Johannesburg. And a lot of people think that I'm an immigrant or so, but it goes back further. So I was born 39 in Joburg, and junior school was Greenside Primary, high school was Roosevelt High, and then on to Wits, doing chemical engineering.
And we've also noticed when we looked at the photos, you were quite a competitive guy in sports, be it soccer, be it swimming, be it basketball. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
If there was something to be done, it had to be done. And if it was athletics, or if it was swimming, or if it was soccer, really, one had to participate. It was almost compulsory. And we were very successful. I think in the Junior Soccer League, we won a Transvaal championship amongst primary schools. And that sport, of course, carried on up to Roosevelt High, where I was captain of rugby, captain of swimming, probably all charitable appointments, but nonetheless.
I also saw a letter that you were awarded Springbok status, Springbok colour status.
Yes, yeah, we were awarded that status, which didn't carry very much in the early days because we were playing against a country like Rhodesia or Mozambique. But when it became very, very real was the invitation to play against a series of American teams in America. And unfortunately, that had to be cancelled because we didn't have a mixed race team. And the Americans were scared that there would be so much demonstration that they would have to call the thing off, which they did. But following that, a Southern Conference of universities in the States came out here, and we played against them. And Ellis Park Tennis Stadium was cleared, and the basketball court marked out on it. And we played against them there and in various other towns in South Africa. So that was real. But we really discovered what basketball was about when we played against them. They were just incredibly good. But before that, we had played against the the champion Greek basketball side, Panathinaikos, and they were so enthralled with the country that a lot of them refused to go back. I won't mention names, but the one married a South African Greek girl in a very successful business. Others went into the stock exchange, and that probably sums up the basketball.
When I went through your photo albums, I also saw you doing hurdles at school, or was it at varsity?
Both. I hurdled at school and then went on to varsity, and I used to hurdle for Wits on Saturdays, 220 and 440 hurdles. But the picture you saw was during army training, and I was running for the army against Air Force and Navy, and that was in 1965. My greatest illustrious loss was against the world champion, Gert Potgieter, and he was so good that after the race I said to him, you know, Keiki saw, if you beat me trying, don't beat me cruising. But he was so good, and he could hurdle with his left foot, his right foot, and smooth. And one can translate that to driving on the track as well. But he was so good, it looked like he was cruising, but just doing it so well and so quick.
Excellent. Brian, after you left school, you went on to study at Wits, engineering. Can you please tell us what engineering field did you study in?
I initially wanted to do mechanical engineering, and I needed a bursary because at that time my dad couldn't pay, and they said to me, there is such a long line applying for Mech-Eng, better go to Chem-Eng, because the first year chemistry, physics, applied maths is all the same, and there's a huge dropout at the end of the first year, so then you can swap over. But I saw that Chem-Eng was very, very valuable. It allowed you to understand metallurgy a bit better, airflow over pebble beds and stuff like that. So I stayed with it. And after qualifying, the Mech-Eng department came to me and said, listen, won't you lecture to some of our final years and be external examiner? And I said, no, you got it wrong. I did Chem-Eng, not Mech-Eng. And they said, no, we know that you touch things, you get your hands dirty and you play with things, and students will identify with that, where we are always setting papers, marking papers, lecturing, invigilating, and we just never get a chance to be able to work on the mechanical things that we would like to. So please do that. And I did that for a couple of years.
After you've obtained your engineering degree, tell us a bit about your early employment. What did you do after varsity?
A number of jobs. One of them was being product line manager for polyurethane, and that was mainly automotive, in steering wheels and garnish moldings on doors, gear knobs, stuff like that, and even seats for the military on their mine-resistant vehicles to cushion the spine damage of any of the soldiers that might have been in those vehicles. And then Plate Glass wanted me because they were running a huge glass factory, but also a mirror plant. And the mirror plant was where the chemical side came in. You would precipitate silver from silver nitrate, and also all of the mechanical stuff that went along with edge polishing machines, cutting machines, and stuff like that. So that was very interesting. And then after that, so each stint was probably five or 6 years. And after that, I was appointed managing director of Westinghouse Brake, which specialized in heavy-duty braking for trucks, trailers, and buses. And then Eddie Kaizen, who we had known through Curie Aquila, a little club that we had formed, asked me to become production manager at Tiger Wheels. And so I did that up until about 94.
So just for the record, Tiger Wheel was the South African successful company producing aftermarket wheels for cars.
Yes, and some OE wheels as well.
Yeah.
And very interesting there was the wheel fatigue testing, because it was all very well to design a pretty wheel, but if it couldn't stand the loads, it would just crack and be extremely dangerous on the track. So the weight of the vehicle, the loading it would have in a corner or over bumps was put in, and a rotating load would be put onto the wheel, and so many million cycles would have to be solved without cracking before it was released on OE.
Brian, I noticed that your first car was a Hillman, but you were obviously not satisfied with that car, so you started to build your own cars.
Yes, that was a 1934 Hillman, which was bought, I think, also for £34, and managed to fix that. But being an absolute little rolling box, decided to build a fiberglass body. But it wasn't a matter of building a kit car where you could buy a body or anything. Started with chicken wire and plaster of Paris, and actually forming it, the whole shape of the car by hand, and sanding. And of course we didn't have any modeling clay at that time, so we used plaster of Paris and the wire. And every weekend when you started on the car again, you spent the first 3 or 4 hours fixing the cracks which had formed because of the difference between expansion of the metal of the wire and the rigidity of the plaster. Sorry, on that car. So we made the buck or the plug or the master, whatever you wanted to call it, and then made a fiberglass mold over that. Took all the plaster out and made 4 bodies out of that car. One I built, which we've got photographs of, and another which Peter de Toy bought, the owner of the Swartkorps racetrack, and he completed that car. And I don't know where the other 2 bodies went.
So what engine and drivetrain did you use in that engine and in that car?
It started off with the Hillman, and then it went to a very small 6-cylinder Vauxhall engine, because I could get that on students' bursary pay, and yeah, that ended up with that Vauxhall engine in it.
Brian, apart from the first car, there was a second and a third car that you built, and I was told that this third car building process was interrupted by your connection to Porsche.
Yeah, second car now had to look like a proper sports car, because people used to call the first one the grey whale or something like that. And so the second one I built, and that one I had discovered the Peugeot motor at the time, which was a hemispherical head and cross-flow head, and fitted that with double choke Webers and an extractor manifold, and that was really a lively supercar.
Did you win any sprints with it in the street?
We should not talk about sprints in the street. Yeah, so on the third car I concentrated a lot on the aerodynamics, the translation of the wind flow from the windscreen to the dome and the dome to the back window. But also, in that one I used a Fiat twin cam 1500 engine, and immediately behind the engine, I machined shafts to accept a Jaguar or Triumph overdrive unit with a push button control, and drove that with a prop shaft through a 4-speed transaxle in the back of the car, so I could have first overdrive, second overdrive, third overdrive, or any combination which I would like. And I was doing quite well with that until the polyurethane company sent me overseas to a German company. And my host there, for some reason, was crazy about Porsche. You know, I'd thought Ferrari had beautiful body shapes and everything up until then. And I said, that's the modified Volkswagen. And 71, he was still the same. 72, he was the same. And I remember in 73, Jeannie was with me, and he was going along the Autobahn and looked in the mirror and, Liebe Gott in Himmel, da kommt die Carrera. And that was the Carrera 2.7 RS. And unbelievable car. And I think, Johan, you will confirm that those things are going for about 10 million rand today. And so I then started reading and discovered that it didn't have a sump, and it didn't have a cam in the middle of the block. It had 2 overhead camshafts, and that the Porsche history was that it was winning most of the classes, nearly all of the classes 3, 5, 6, and the classes above it. And so I got interested, and Jean and I found a 2.4S in a garage on the side of Barry Herzog, the old Barry Herzog, where it used to root, and it was 6,500 rand. And we looked at each other and we said, never. We can never spend 6,500 rand on a car when you can buy a complete house and garden in Parktown North for 9. So that went on. And in 74, we found a car for 4,500 in Germany and thought that was fantastic. So we bought that and got that back here. And that was the start of the Porsche thing. And that was the let go of the third car, which is still in a garage in the bottom of the garden, for 30 years now, 40 years or whatever.
So Brian, you also had a stint with working for Armscor, Noggin in particular, and then I also noticed that there was a helicopter somewhere in the story.
Yeah, the ammunition was first of all at Lens. I was 2IC at Lens, and they also had a plant at Boskop in Potchefstroom, and they were manufacturing heavy aircraft bombs, 250 kilogram, 500 kilogram, and long-range artillery shells, anti-aircraft fire, and stuff like that. So I was put in charge of the Boskop plant after leaving the Lens factory. I already had a Porsche at that stage, which was very funny for people in the military, because there had to be something wrong. There had to be drugs or something, because you should not in the army be able to have a Porsche. And very often, I think it was Magnus Milan or somebody came to the Lens factory, and I was there, and I had to greet them at the Porsche factory, and I closed the door on them in the helicopter and got into the Porsche, and I beat them to Potchefstroom. But that was driving under the speed limits, of course. It was just that it was a very good handling car. And the helicopter was a frame. It was a project with unique controls on the swash plate and unique control on the rotor blades. But the military at that stage said they wanted to design something that flies, and a fixed wing was too easy. they had the Bosbok, I think, or they had the Bosbok, which was a conversion of fuel to sound,
Yeah.
and that was too easy to do another one of those, and a full helicopter was too complicated. So they went for an autogyro and spent most of the budget on an autogyro, which they built and flew.
In the Porsche world, you are known as a driver, a racer, and an engineer. We also saw that you had acquired various top speed records during this illustrious Porsche career, almost, at various tracks and venues in South Africa.
Yes, the car after being turbocharged was very, very quick, and I used to enter it at Tarleton at the drag strip. The Sports Car Club of South Africa used to arrange a 100-mile-an-hour day, so a 160 k an hour, and we used to start at Clubhouse and go up to Leerkop, and with the length of the straight, it was very difficult. In those days, Ferrari Daytona couldn't manage 100 miles an hour. E-Type Jaguars couldn't manage. Alfa Romeos couldn't manage. So it was quite a target to achieve. And those few that did manage got a sports car club badge with 100 mile an hour club on it. And then as years went by, so the Porsche turbos came out, and they started running 230, which compared to 160 was absolute day and night. So that was very remarkable. And a couple of years after that, there was a guy in Pretoria who got a Ferrari GTO, and he ran 246 odd, which then eclipsed the Porsches. And somebody was saying, "Was Brian White no? Was I no?" And somebody said, "No, hey, come." And I was there on the day, and I ran 274. And the people on the timing said, "No, there's something wrong with the timing equipment. It can't work. But can you do it again?" And I said, "Yes, this is a Porsche. I can do it again. It's not like some of the other makes where you need a heart lung machine to rest it for an hour before it can do a second run." And the second run was, I think, 273.9. And so I've got that certificate for 273.9. And that record probably still stands. It was something like 11k slower than a Formula One in those days.
So that convinced him that the timing equipment did in fact work.
Yes. Yeah, no, that was very good. But you must remember, Formula One is very unaerodynamic with open wheels and all the drag around it, and the huge wings which would drag, which give it its speed through the corners but hamper it a lot on the straight. But still very pleased to be only 11 k's an hour slower than a Formula One car.
Remarkable.
Yeah. But the start of all of that was, I got this 2.4 1974 car, and Porsche jolly well went and made a turbo. And a mine captain in Welkom had bought one of these, and it was for sale in Pretoria for 36,000. Now you can imagine if we had refused the car at 6,500, what 36,000 looked like. So I went back to all of my fluid flow and thermodynamics and books that I could read to try and identify a turbocharger that would work. And it landed up being a Holset, which was a British turbo, and it happened to be used on, I think, on a Fordson tractor. And if you stand back and look at a turbo, you realize that a turbo only knows air. So it doesn't know if it's on a 3-litre doing 6,000 or a 6-litre doing 3,000. So I managed to find one of those and got it overhauled, and then built manifolds, inlet inlet and exhaust, and managed to get the barometric cell on the mechanical, the MFI, the mechanical injection pump, to maintain the fueling for the boost that was applied. So all of a sudden there was a rocket ship, and up until that stage I'd always been developing other people's cars for Eric Adler in Onyx production cars, which he won. And with this turbo car, I then saw it was so quick in a straight line that I started with quarter mile sprints, and set up a number of records there for Porsche, which was remarkable. People used to throw their caps in the air because everything had been won by American V8s up until that time. And then this little silver lump in the road used to line up and beat them all, and it was remarkable. I'm sure it did very well for Toby in the latter years. That was a Tarleton. Yeah, and then there was that top end at Kyalami, and that was on a track. Of course, you don't have unlimited distance, so you can usually never get to your top speed. And there was also a top speed at Welkom, and that was of the same order, about 270 k's an hour for that circuit. And then a lot of roads were being built in the country at the time, and before they were opened, the sports car club or various clubs used to get permission to run events on that, provided they had the right safety rigs. And this turbo car could run over 300, 309, 310 on these roads. And that went on to Mabatu Airport, and there the speed was 335, and people couldn't believe it. It was incredible, 335. And then there was another event by a car club, and ran 329, and somewhere else 309. So the over 300 was cemented, and that was in 1984, 85, 86. So very pleased with that.
I also remember you did one at the old West Bank racetrack in the East Rand.
Not many people know that horse racing circuit was turned by Peter Lindenberg into a car racing circuit with somewhat of a straight on it. And I think the top speed there was maybe 250 odd, because you had to get on the brakes or land up in the kitty litter, which happened once or twice to other people.